My name's Jessica Rivas, and I'm from Texas A&M, and we're here at the Tapia conference, and I'm here with
Josef Sifuentes.
Okay, and he's a PhD student. So,
Right.
how's grad school going for you? What inspired you to continue to have a higher education?
Well, grad school's going well. I am close to finishing. I hope to defend my thesis either late summer or early fall. So it's spring now. So I'm almost finished. So it's going well in that respect. Now, how did I get myself to grad school, or what inspired me to go to grad school? A lot of things. So I'm a student. I was an undergrad at Rice University, where I'm now a graduate student, and of course, the famous Dr. Tapia is a professor there. So his program, which is the Alliance for Graduate Education and the Professoriate, which is a summer research experience, and more than the research experience, but it was also the network of students who had similar backgrounds as me and similar experiences as me, who were graduate students who were in the same summer program when I was an undergrad. They served almost as an existence proof that such things do exist, that people like me can do this and can make a contribution. So my research experiences, the network that I was plugged into, and examples and mentors like Dr. Tapia all played a part in pointing me towards graduate school.
Nice. So I know you grew up in a neighborhood with different students, and there's different stereotypes. How has that helped you overcome, your challenges that you've encountered? How has that helped you?
The thing is, I came from a neighborhood that was largely Mexican American and very working class. And I think the biggest distinction between my neighborhood and maybe a middle class neighborhood is that going to college wasn't the norm. And I think that's a big distinction. It wasn't, going to college and getting a bachelor's in many neighborhoods is just standard, right? That's normal. You don't have to really be extraordinary to go to college, right? Because it's considered run-of-the-mill, standard operating procedure. Whereas in my neighborhood, it was if you went to college, you were considered extraordinary or outstanding, right? And I think that was the big distinction. Now, there was lots of people in my neighborhood who were probably smarter than me, and got factory jobs out of high school, and didn't do anything other than labor, and yet many of them were very brilliant because they couldn't overcome taking kind of this path of least resistance. In spite of them being very intelligent, they didn't have the drive to step outside of this least resistance path. But for different neighborhoods, the path of least resistance may be college. So I think that's the biggest distinction between my neighborhood and the environment that I grew up in other neighborhoods. Now, I think one of the biggest factors growing up was that I knew early on that education was very important. And one of the reasons that I knew was that when I was in second grade, one of my teachers suggested to my parents that I enroll in a Vanguard program, a gifted and talented program, and which meant I had to go to a different school. So in second grade, I learned the lesson that different schools were different quality, okay, even though they're all HISD.
Yeah.
I learned this lesson, that there were schools that were better than others, and there were programs within schools that were better than others. So I knew since then that I had to pick good schools. So when I went to middle school, I applied to a good school, and I got in. And then when I went to high school, I applied to a good school, and I got in, even though I went to an HISD school. So I grew up in the east end of Houston, which is largely Mexican American working class, but I went to school in River Oaks, which is very affluent. And in most of my classes, I would take International Baccalaureate, which is an international honors standard, and I was almost always the only Mexican American in the class. So that actually pushed me to work hard because I, in some sense, and a lot of teenagers, of course, try to come to grips with who their identity is. So when I was in high school, I had a certain identity that was reinforced in my neighborhood, and yet that identity stuck out like a sore thumb in my high school. So it actually worked to reinforce that identity in me. In fact, I would always dress up like all my friends in my neighborhood. You know, would always wear Dickies and Chuck Taylors or Nike Cortez and, you know, lowrider shirts. And a lot of times people would look at me and dismiss me, and yet in class I'd get a better test than them, or I'd have better grades than them, or I would do better on a project than them. In fact, I remember my freshman year of high school in a geometry class, there was actually another Hispanic student. He wasn't Mexican though. He was, I believe he was Guatemalan. But we were the only two Hispanics in the class, and we all had to do a puzzle. We had to work with a partner, and the puzzle had to do with putting together a puzzle based on trigonometric identities, and, you know, whoever did it first won, right? And me and my partner, Jose Dominguez, still remember his name, we did it first. And one student said, "Wow, I can't believe the two Mexicans beat everyone." And it wasn't really said out of malice. It was just, that was really how they thought. They were just shocked. How, that's weird. Because their impression of Mexican Americans was really limited to the people who maybe cleaned their house or mowed their lawn, or who they saw doing labor jobs. They didn't really interact on a peer level with people like me. So it was that kind of attitude that was more out of ignorance rather than malice that I had to overcome, and it was almost like a chip on my shoulder that made me work harder and say, I'm going to retain my identity, and I'm still going to do better than you. And that pushed me to excel and do very well and get into a good college. And I got into Rice and met Dr. Tapia, and that goes back to the previous answer.
Yeah. So we hope that one day you become somebody like Dr. Richard Tapia, or, you know, to inspire many undergrad students and students throughout neighborhoods like the one you grew up in. You know, we'll have many different stories like that be presented in conferences like this one. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.